Okay,
We're being
respect.
filmed. They want to hear not just that comment, so let's keep quiet.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you heard from young people. We're talking about Andrew Jackson versus the bank. Now, this is really important. Old Andy J, he was known as an imperial president. That is, he seemed to rule more than he governed. That's a huge difference. When you hear somebody talking about like the ruling class in Washington, they're not saying nice things. That means, hey, you guys do not own us. It's not like a king back in medieval times. No, 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 no. You govern. We elect you. We the people. We give you power. Well, Andrew Jackson, I mean, he ignored the Supreme Court, moved to Cherokee on the Trail of Tears. It seemed like Andrew Jackson pushed through a lot of things that Andrew Jackson wanted, and he just had not just a forceful personality, but also he's the hero of New Orleans. He's the guy. So we have a little confrontation here over the Second Bank of the United States. Now listen to me carefully. The name of this institution is the Second Bank of the United States. Capital S, capital B, capital U, capital S. The Second Bank of the United States. And you may call it the bank with a capital B. So we're not confusing it with any other bank. You may just call it the bank. All right? Cool. Well, let's start off by talking about the period we're in. It's the antebellum period. There are distinct periods in American history. There was the colonial period. When did that end? July 4th, 1776. We said we're not colonies anymore. We're a country. Okay, when did it begin? When did it begin? 1607, Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in North America. So from 1776 back to 1607, that was the colonial period. After that, they were establishing the country. We had the federal period when they were first setting things up. Now we're into the antebellum period. Ante is a prefix which means before. For those of you who are serious poker players like Gus, what do you do before you start dealing, or after you deal the cards before you bet? You throw in your ante. Ante, that means that's what's put in before the game begins. So ante means before, bellum means war. This is before the Civil War, the period after the federal period to the period of the Civil War. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, go ahead. You at home could sharpen your pencils too. Sawyer's done. It's too late. Yes.
What's the period after the colonial time?
Federal, with a capital F, federal period. Okay, I put this in here, man. You think about those big southern mansions. It's a period that happened all over the country, but that's where you most hear it now, is they talk about like antebellum architecture in the South, because a lot of it was blown up. So it tells you this is the stuff that was predates the Civil War, but you know, still around here. Okay, and then we have a picture of Talal's house. You know, kind of a modest place. All right, the world is changing here. The United States is changing. Remember, when people came over at first, the idea was quick. Get to the frontier where you could get a piece of land. And that made this the land of opportunity, because back in the old world, in Europe, there was no way to get a hold of land, because the land was the source of the power for people with titles. They owned the land. So everybody had to pay rent to them. Everybody relied on their good graces to keep their jobs, to be able to just work in the world back then. So land was the source of power. People coming over here now could get what they never had been able to get in the old world, a piece of land. So what do? Of course, they farmed. That's what most people did. They produced food. Now, of course, the first thing they'd worry about is producing enough for their families and anything else they might trade for. Like if I have a big apple orchard, obviously we're not going to eat nothing but apples for the next year. So maybe I take some of my bushels of apples and I go down to the guy with a cornfield and we make a trade. I get some corn for flour and he gets some apples for dessert. So we make a lot of trades. Money's a little bit scarce though. But 28 years later, 1828, it had gone from having 15 farmers for each person that lived in a city down to only 10. And you might say, well, that's not, so huge. But when you think about it the other way, that's roughly a third of the people moving off the farms and going towards the city. That's pretty enormous. That's a lot of movement. And they're able to go there now because there are jobs. There's industry. Cities used to be based around a lot of, you had some warehouses, some counting houses, some place to make some trade so that it could go on ships. And of course, there were places where, cities where the corn and the wheat and the cotton and everything were collected and transported. But now we're getting bigger things, more things being made, more factories. All right, Andrew Jackson served 2 terms as President of the United States. He was elected in 1828. He beat John Quincy Adams. And again in 1832. All right. This story begins before the election of 1832. So Andrew Jackson is already president, and he's going to run for re-election. He wants another 4 years as president. Now, Andrew Jackson did not like the Second Bank of the United States, which was a bank chartered to do the government's business. You couldn't run over there, you, Joe Citizen, couldn't run over and open up a savings account. It wasn't that kind of a bank. This was the government's bank. This was for doing the government's business. Because the government has to write checks, and the government collects taxes. The government pays for dams and bridges and roads and harbor restoration. So, who elected Andrew Jackson? Pretty easy to see here. You got the first time around up in the Northeast. They went for John Quincy Adams. The other guys, more to the west and to the south, they went for Andrew Jackson. So that's the people that Andrew Jackson cares about, the people in the west and the south. Those are his folks. He figures the bank really only serves the people in the Northeast, the John Quincy Adams kind of people. And the reason he does that is because, yes, banks do lend out money. And what would they lend out money for? A big bank like the Second Bank of the United States? For things like building a canal or building a railroad or making more modern roads, all those transportation things which seem to be dedicated mostly to the Northeast, to where there's industry. And so Andrew Jackson, like most Northerners, or excuse me, like most Southerners and Westerners, doesn't like the bank. He thinks it only serves these people. Why should we be paying for it when it's only serving the other guy? Okay. Let's get a definition down. We talked about it when we talked about colonies early on. A charter. Here it comes. Ready, Sawyer? You're ready to write. You got a pen in your hand. It's impressive. Okay. A charter is a document giving official permission to do something. A charter is a document giving official permission to do something. A charter is a document giving official permission to do something. And we talked about over here, the British king would give charters to people to make colonies. So they got official permission to do that thing, to run a colony. What we're talking about here is the government gave to the Second Bank of the United States a charter to run for 20 years. That you can be the United States government bank for 20 years. And those 20 years would expire in 1836. So it still had 4 more years to go before the election of 1832. But Andrew Jackson has let it be known he hated the bank. His political opponents thought, hey, we can turn this into a campaign issue. Yes, ma'am.
Why did he hate the bank then?
Because he thought it cost money to the average person out there in the frontier, but they weren't getting any benefit from it. Okay, so why should we pay for it? Okay. So it's got 4 more years to run till 1836. But his opponents, Jackson's opponents, thought, hey, we could turn this into a campaign issue. What's a campaign issue? What's a campaign issue? Well, I think we need a little bit more than that. Allow. What? What was? Oh, okay. That's not enough information. Let's get some more. Yes, ma'am.
Like something that two opponents have an idea about, they like fight it out in different ways.
Right, they have differing ideas about. Now, listen, I'll back it up and explain it to you in detail. First of all, what's a campaign? In the military, in politics, it doesn't matter. What the word campaign means is a series of battles for one purpose. A series of battles with one goal in mind. Like a political campaign we just went through was a series of battles trying to be nominated in each of the states for a goal to become president of the United States. So it's a series of battles with one goal in mind. Now that's a campaign. A campaign issue is something that shows the difference between candidates. And someone would bring up something as a campaign issue because either they thought it would give their person more votes or it would take votes away from their opponent. So what was the big issue this last election? We just went through a year of it. What were they talking about? Come on. What? No. The year 2020.
Oh, like health or something.
COVID. What did Joe Biden constantly say?
Oh.
This guy doesn't have a plan. It doesn't have a plan.
Health insurance.
Okay. Health insurance. You need to be insured. The government can do that for you. The private sector can do that for you. That's a different view. Another campaign issue? Okay, the Black Lives Matter thing, you know. Yeah, what else?
Clean energy.
Clean energy. Okay, we're going to have this pipeline. We're not going to have this pipeline. We're going to use gas. We're going to use electric. What are we going to use? Okay, you get the idea. So there are a few things that the candidates kept mentioning. They kept mentioning them because they thought either that would bring them more votes or it would take votes away from their opponent. Well, the people that opposed Andrew Jackson said this will be a great campaign issue because he doesn't like the bank and we, his opponents, think everybody loves the bank. So we're going to keep talking about the bank. We want to recharter the bank. We want to recharter the bank. And as a matter of fact, just so it would come up, they had the bank apply for a charter 4 years early. They said, hey, bank, ask for another 20-year charter, but do it in 1832 so we can use it as a campaign issue in this election. Don't wait until Jackson's out of office. Do it now. Wait a minute.
Could you say the definition of
A campaign issue is a subject brought up repeatedly. The subject brought up repeatedly by candidates. The subject brought up repeatedly by candidates to get themselves votes. Good job, Shirley. Writing this down. To get themselves votes or to take votes away from their opponent. A subject brought up repeatedly by candidates to get votes for themselves or to take votes away from their opponent. Omar. No, it's applying 4 years early. It wants 20 more years. It already had permission from 1816 to 1836, but now they're applying from 1836 to 1856, but they're doing it way back in 1832. So they're applying 4 years early for another 20 years. Good question. Get it straight. Okay, cool. So here you got this campaign issue, and they say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. We're going to defeat Andrew Jackson. Political cartoons from the Times know that he's Andrew Jackson and he's vetoing the bill, and this is the bank crumbling over here. Pillars are falling down. Congress approved the charter. They said, yep, we'll give you another 20 years. And Andrew Jackson vetoed it. Remember, veto is one of the powers the president has. It's a Latin word which literally means I forbid. That means if Congress passes a really bad law, the president can say, no, you can't do that. And so Jackson said, no, I forbid, veto, I veto this law. And then Andrew Jackson won an overwhelming victory. Now, this is his second political campaign. Remember, presidents are elected in the Electoral College state by state. Jackson has the yellow state. Okay, this is pretty amazingly dominant. This is a different little color. Somebody took Vermont. There were a couple of candidates. Yay, the anti-Masonic movement took Vermont. Because people didn't like Masons. And then green, we got independent Democrats. That was another candidate. Because they didn't like Andrew Jackson too much, they took South Carolina. And then the guy who was running, called the National Republican Party for a while, Henry Clay, and he's got the brown one. All right, so Jackson wins this overwhelming victory. Guess what? What? He didn't. This is his second one. Yeah. All right. Now, Andrew Jackson doesn't lose well. Andrew Jackson doesn't win well either, because if you tried to cross Andrew Jackson, he's going to like rub your face in the ground. And that's exactly what he did with this. You don't mess with me, boys. I told you I don't like the bank, and then you tried to get it extended. Well, guess what I'm going to do? You see, he's the chief executive of the United States. That means he gets to run the government day by day. The bank had permission to run another 4 years. Its charter went all the way to 1836. And Andrew Jackson, what he, bless you, kind of what he did with the Supreme Court, he said, yeah, all right, you've got 4 more years to be a bank. Only as of today, I'm taking all the money out. So he just took the money out of the bank. They kept the building. They kept, the only employee was the president of the bank because there was nothing happening inside the building. And he just killed the bank by taking all the money out. And what he did was, he said, yeah, my guys in the South and the West, that's my strong area. So instead of having this big central bank up here in the Northeast, where my opponents are, I'm doing something different. I'm taking all the money out of that bank and I'm putting it into little banks all across the frontier in the South and the West. And those were called test banks. So they were, of course, run by people who had supported Jackson for president. So he killed the second bank, took the money out, and put it into banks all across the frontier. Question, huh?
But wouldn't that take away some of his voters in the Northeast?
His solid voters came from the West and the South, but he can't run for president again. So he's down. He's got his 2 terms in. All right, cool. Okay, let's figure this out. No. Okay, let's figure this out. Yes, sir. He what? He just take out money from any bank. He could? No. No, he's dealing with the government's money. And the second bank of the United States, all it had was the government's money, because it was the government's bank. So running it day by day, he just said, well, I'm taking all that money out, and I'm depositing, not for him, but still in government accounts all across the South and West. Now remember, he's putting these into private banks. These pet banks are private banks. Banks make money. So, how do banks make money? Got it.
Lending it out to others.
Lending it out to other people. So here come these huge amounts of money into these frontier banks, and they now have to lend out huge amounts of money. Well, what can people buy on the frontier that costs a lot? Land. And who do they buy the land from? The government. What does the government do with the money? They put it right back in the banks, who then have to lend it out again. So suddenly there's this flood of money because the banks keep getting these deposits. They have to keep lending it out. And when they're lending it out, it becomes easier and easier and easier to get money from a bank. Because by gosh, if you need to buy land or you want to buy land, boy, they're dying to give it to you. I mean, pretty much if you have a pulse. I don't remember if I told you this story first semester or not, but uh, there was a great case. Sometimes it's really hard to borrow money. Sometimes it's really easy to borrow money. And I remember back when I was a kid, there was a fellow on a talk show, and he had one of those wallets that the little thing slides in. It's got all the pictures. You drop like 30 pictures of there. You guys have seen them? Okay. Well, the guy comes out and he's holding his little dog, and he's an expert on getting credit. And so, whoever the host was said, yeah, so, I hear you can get credit pretty well. The guy pulled out his wallet and he just let it drop, went all the way down to the floor, just full of credit cards. Right? He said, yeah, this represents, now remember, this is 50 years ago, so this is money's worth a lot more of it. And he said, yeah, this represents like $1.5 million in credit. And the guy said, wow, that's incredible. You have $1.5 million in charge card credit? He said, no, this is the dog. I don't know how he filled out the forms. I mean, sometimes you can fill out forms and mislead people, and they'll go ahead and give you the credit. I mean, sometimes you can fill out forms that's kind of humorous. I remember there was one guy that was famous for, he worked for Orkin, the bug people. And when he filled out his taxes every year, it said profession. He always wrote down professional killer. Never got questioned about it. He was just the Orkin man. He's a professional killer. He killed bugs. Anyway, so that was easy to get credit. Well, now in this, it's incredibly easy to get credit. You walk into a bank, if you have a pulse and you sign a form, you're going to get a loan. And so there's a flood of money on the frontier. What do? They go out and buy farms. Then what do they do next? Government puts it right back in the bank. They're dying to lend it to other people. Yes. Yeah. When you give who your money? Okay. Yes. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. They're gonna buy a house. Okay, well, let me give you a number, $100,000. Okay. Okay. So they're gonna want $10,000 interest somewhere. They do different ways for different kinds of loans. And they sometimes will do it on a per diem on a daily basis. How much do you owe on that day? Sometimes like mortgages in the United States are pretty commonly once a month. They figure out the interest. If you pay them on the first or the 15th, they don't care. It's going to be the same amount of interest. So it depends on the bank and the loan. That's what. Can you do bank loans for refrigerators? Can a person do that? Yes, if the bank will lend for small personal loans, yes. Okay, yes, ma'am. I'm about to tell you. Okay, so now, here comes all this money. All right. Now, I don't want you to give me silly answers. Just stop and think about this. Suppose each one of you gets $2 this week. You don't have any money at home. You don't have another account. I'm going to hand each one of you $2 once a week. That is all the money you're going to have. You do not get any more. Okay? $2, no other source of income. You have $2 to spend this week. That's it. And then I pull out that pack of pink snowball hostess treats that I had yesterday. And I say, okay, I want to sell this, and I've got change. What am I bid? Now somebody might say, geez, I like hostess things. You're buying the store for about $1. So yeah, I'll give you 50 cents. I'll give you 75. Maybe I'll give you, I don't know. I only have $2. I want something else. I'm really thinking about a soda or a burger at McDonald's or whatever. So give you $100 this week and $100 once a week after that. And I said, okay, now I got snowballs here. So how much am I bid? And somebody might, knowing you could go over to Walmart and get it for $1, still somebody might say, yeah, but I'm not at Walmart, I'm here and I really want to eat those. I'll give you $2. Well, I'll give you 3 because I want the pink snowballs. So the price, because money is so available, goes up. Okay? Matter of fact, that's what inflation is, right? Okay. Inflation is rapidly rising prices caused by an excess of money. Rapidly rising prices caused by an excess of money. There's too much money floating around. Rapidly rising prices caused by an excess, E-X-C-E-S-S, E-X-C-E-S-S, excess of money. Okay, there's always inflation in America. It's kind of planned that way. It's a secret little thing because government prints the money and it's just a little bit extra every time. You kind of give themselves a little boost there. But if you take a look, like these are actual average coffee prices. You get a cup of coffee in 1970 at 25 cents. And it moves up by 10 years, 45, 10 more years, 75, 10 more years, $1, 10 more years, $1.25, 9 more years, it's $1.59. So it kind of sneaks up on you, but wow, look at it, from 25 cents to $1.59. I told you guys, when I was a kid, a regular sized Hershey bar, 5 cents. 5 cents. And if inflation keeps up like that, we figured it was around $1 now. That means you're going to buy your grandchildren a Hershey bar. It'll cost you about $20 to do that. So that would be the same amount of growth because it's 20 times as much as I paid as a kid. So it's kind of amazing how this creeps up. Well, the money's flying around the frontier. All kinds of it. People are buying land. People are just, it's not hard to get a loan. You want money, why should the bank say, hey, I have a pulse, give me some money? Pretty much they will. But then the government puts the brakes on inflation. They say, oh, this is getting bad. Because what happens, don't copy that, look at this. You start to get inflation out here on the frontier, prices go up. Okay, prices are going up for everything. Like the shovel they sold for $1, now they're going to get $5 for it because money is so readily available. But if the people back here that are making the shovels said, well, we used to sell that to you for 50 cents, but if you're getting $5, we're going to up our prices to $2. So now you're going to say, well, I'm going up to $7 instead of 5. And prices are growing up here. Inflation is coming across, moving towards the east, going across the country. They say, whoa, inflation can wreck an economy. We got to get rid of it. So they pass a law called the Specie Circular. That is the name of a law. And the Specie Circular says all government land payments, all payments for government land must be paid for in specie. All public land payments all government land payments must be made in specie. And specie is gold or silver, usually coin. Gold or silver, usually coin. That means if you go to the bank and they give you $10,000 in paper money, it's easy to borrow, but you can't make your land payment with it. You can't pay for your farm with that. You need gold or silver to do that. Yeah, buddy. It's a law which says all payments for government land must be made in specie. And specie is gold or silver, usually coin. All right, cool. This is a problem because now people can't afford to pay for their farms. People can't afford to buy more land. The banks are flooded with paper money, which nobody wants anymore. And it causes a depression. A depression, right there, a steep and sustained drop in economic activity accompanied by high unemployment. A steep and sustained drop in economic activity. Businesses closed. In the Panic of 1837, about 35%, about a third of all businesses closed. They went out of business completely, all the way across the country. And it's featuring high unemployment. When the business is closed, people don't have jobs. What does that lead to? More people unable to buy anything. They don't have any jobs. Yeah.
Why do people not want like paper money?
Because they couldn't make their payments for their homes.
Also, they
And so people like the storekeepers, they didn't want paper money anymore either. They want gold.
Oh, okay.
Okay, suddenly everybody wants gold or silver. Okay. Now, just to let you know what depressions are like, I'm going to tell you a couple things about the Great Depression. That is not, I'm not talking now about the Panic of 1837. I'm talking about the one that happened in the 1930s, right before World War II. My mom was alive. Okay, it's not that terribly long ago. Well, my wife's grandmother, was a little old lady, had crippled kind of hands, and she lived alone on the south side in this little tiny house. And this is like the advent of Meals on Wheels, where somebody would bring her some food. And when she passed away, they're cleaning out the house. And she was a Depression woman. She grew up when people didn't have anything in the Depression. So they'd bring her like a piece of ham in a baggie. She would always wash out the baggie. She never threw any of them away. There's this giant pile of used but washed out baggies downstairs. All the little twist ties have been straightened out and put in a drawer. You didn't throw anything away because you couldn't get anything else. If we had a depression starting right now, I hope you're comfortable in those clothes, because those are the clothes you have maybe for the next decade. So maybe you can fit into some of mom's clothes. Maybe we can take a couple of your outfits, sew them together, and use the cloth to do something. Maybe you're going to be wearing the bed sheets or the curtains when we have to make something new. But you can't afford to go out and buy something. So nothing new for a long time. And then my wife's mother talked about during the Depression, when they would come in, they would have a couple of pieces of bread, and guess what they used to put in between it? Petroleum jelly.
Oh my God.
Vaseline. Not a big thick glot, just a little bit, because you need a little lubricant for all that bread. So yeah, that's what they did. At the height of the Great Depression, again, this isn't the Panic of 1837. I just want you to understand it, because this is something that my parents talked about. Almost just a hair short of 25% unemployment. That means of all the adults out looking for a job, anything to feed their family. I will shovel poop. I will clean the rags out of a hospital. I will do whatever it takes. 1 out of 4 of them couldn't find anything, no matter how hard they looked. There were people that, lived over here that went all the way over to California looking for a job. Anything, any place. I'll do anything to be able to feed my family, and 1 out of 4 of them couldn't find anything. As a matter of fact, if you look at the growth of the population of the world, it goes, woo, look at that, it just goes up. But that's not strictly true. Actually, if you blow it up, they always show you this in like 100-year segments, or show you 30,000 years at one time. Actually, in the Great Depression, it did this. Went up, and then it dipped, and then it continued up. Because people stopped having babies. Because they said, I will not bring a child into a world that is this ugly. They simply won't have a baby. So that's kind of a scary thing to tell you how rough this was. All right, and again, that's talking about the Depression that was nearly 100 years after this. But the Depression of 1837, wow, that was rugged stuff. And that is going to start a whole bunch of people saying, our life is a wreck over here. Let's go west. Let's go way west. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. All right, Johnny people. Hasta la vista, baby. Clean your desk.